Black female pilot denied entry to cockpit moments later. She grounds the airline, exposing violations. The security card flashes red. Access denied. Captain Elaine Johnson stands frozen before the cockpit door, her gold-striped uniform crisp against her dark skin, disbelief etching across her face as three white male pilots stare through the reinforced glass. "Protocol," one mouths through the window, but his smirk tells a different story. What no one realizes in this moment: within 48 hours, this decorated pilot will not only ground this aircraft, but expose corruption that will shake the entire airline industry to its core. The lead pilot slides the inner security panel closed. Elaine stands alone in the narrow passageway, 347 passengers seated behind her, completely unaware that the woman entrusted with their lives is being locked out of her own command. Her hand trembles slightly as she swipes her security badge again. Red light. She takes a deep breath, remembering her father's words from decades ago. "They'll give you 1,000 reasons why you don't belong. Give them one undeniable reason why you do." If you're watching this right now and haven't yet subscribed, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. This story of courage and justice is one you won't want to miss, and subscribing ensures you'll see more powerful, true stories like this one. Flight 2187 to San Francisco sits fully boarded at gate C-47. Through the cabin windows, a November rain pelts the tarmac of O'Hare International. Elaine's mind races through protocols, regulations, her spotless 22-year record. Nothing explains this. Nothing except the obvious, the thing no one in professional aviation dares name anymore. She reaches for the intercom phone beside the cockpit door. "This is Captain Johnson. There appears to be a security malfunction with my credentials. I'm requesting immediate assistance from ground operations." Her voice betrays nothing, professional, measured, the same voice that has guided countless passengers safely through turbulent skies. Inside, a storm builds. The truth is, Captain Elaine Johnson should never have been on this flight at all. But to understand how a decorated pilot finds herself locked out of her own cockpit, and how she'll turn this humiliation into the biggest airline scandal of the decade, we need to go back to where it all began, just 72 hours earlier. The call that changed everything 3 days before. Elaine sits in her Chicago apartment, surrounded by framed photographs mapping a journey few thought possible for a black girl from the South Side. Her father in his mail carrier uniform stands beside her mother, a hospital administrator whose sensible shoes had worn identical paths through their home's vinyl flooring. Between them, 12-year-old Elaine holds a model airplane, her smile wide and determined. Beside that photo sits a newer one, Captain Johnson in full uniform before her first commercial flight as command pilot. 22 years, 14,000 flight hours, and a lifetime of proving herself separate these images. The modest two-bedroom apartment on the 17th floor offers a sweeping view of Lake Michigan, a daily reminder of why she'd fallen in love with flying. As a child, she'd stand at the lakeshore watching aircraft climb into the vast blue expanse, their contrails like chalk lines across the sky. Her father would lift her onto his shoulders, pointing to the distant specks growing smaller. "That could be you up there someday, Laney," he'd say. Back then, in the late 1970s, the idea of a black girl becoming an airline captain seemed as distant as the stars themselves. A framed newspaper clipping from 1995 hangs near her flight certificates, her graduation from the Air Force Academy, one of only 4 black women in her class. The military had been her way in, her path to the cockpit when civilian flight schools seemed financially out of reach for a postal worker's daughter. 10 years of service to her country, flying C-130 transports through war zones and humanitarian crises had forged her into the pilot she'd become, methodical, unflappable, precise. The phone rings. Elaine recognizes the number, Central Airlines scheduling. "Captain Johnson, Ted Hamilton from operations. We've got a situation with Flight 2187 to San Francisco tomorrow. Captain Reynolds came down with something. Food poisoning, apparently. Bad oysters." The man on the other end of the line sounds harried, desperate. "I'm not on the rotation until next week," Elaine says, though she already knows she'll say yes. She always does. The first black female captain in Central's history can't afford to be anything less than accommodating. 22 years in the industry had taught her that her competence was always questioned, her authority always slightly more tenuous than her white male counterparts. A single refusal would be remembered longer than 100 acceptances. "We're in a bind, Captain. The 2187 is full, holiday weekend. We need someone with your experience level." A pause. "There'd be premium pay, of course." Elaine glances at the stack of bills on her kitchen counter. Her mother's assisted living costs have nearly doubled this year, the advanced memory care unit now exceeding $7,800 monthly. Her father had passed 5 years ago, cancer, leaving her as her mother's sole support. The extra pay would help. "I'll take it," she says. "Text me the details." "You're a lifesaver, Johnson, literally." Hamilton's relief is palpable. "Briefing materials will be uploaded to your tablet within the hour." After hanging up, Elaine walks to her kitchen and pours herself a glass of water, gazing out at the Chicago skyline. Night has fallen, the city a constellation of lights stretching to the horizon. She'd given up so much for this career. Relationships that couldn't withstand the irregular hours and constant travel, the possibility of children, a normal life. But in moments like this, seeing the city from above, she remembers why. The sky had always been her true home. She opens her tablet to review the preliminary flight plan for tomorrow. San Francisco, a route she knows well. The aircraft, a Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner, is practically her second home. She's logged over 2,000 hours on the type, appreciating its advanced systems and fuel efficiency. As she scrolls through the passenger manifest and cargo details, a small anomaly catches her attention. The cargo weight seems unusually high for a passenger flight. Nothing alarming, just a mental note. Probably just a heavy shipment of commercial goods or mail. Her phone pings with a text from her friend Diane, another pilot at a different airline. "Still on for brunch Sunday." "Need to vent about the new scheduling system." Elaine sighs as she responds. "Rain check, just got called for SFO tomorrow." She adds a shrugging emoji. "Again, do these people not know how to schedule?" comes the quick reply. "You're too accommodating, they take advantage." Maybe Diane is right, Elaine thinks. But what choice does she have? In an industry where second chances rarely come to people who look like her, saying no isn't really an option, not if she wants to keep her captain's seat. She packs her overnight bag methodically. Uniform, backup shirt, toiletries, running shoes. She never misses her morning run, even on overnight trips. iPad loaded with books she rarely finds time to read. The ritual calms her, prepares her mind for the responsibility of tomorrow. 347 lives will depend on her judgment, her focus, her skill. Before bed, she calls her mother at Lakeside Memory Care. "Mom, it's Elaine." "Elaine, is that you, honey? Are you coming to visit today?" Her mother's voice sounds distant, confused. "Not today, Mom. Remember I visited yesterday? I brought those chocolate muffins you like." A pause. "Oh, yes, the muffins. They were lovely." The conversation continues in this vein, circular, repetitive, heartbreaking in its slow erasure of the sharp-minded woman who had once maintained flawless hospital records and raised a daughter on her own after her husband's long hours at the post office. Alzheimer's was stealing her mother piece by piece, memory by memory. "I'm flying to San Francisco tomorrow, Mom. I'll visit when I get back." "San Francisco? Your father and I went there on our honeymoon. Have I told you about the cable cars?" "Yes, Mom, many times." Elaine smiles sadly. "Get some rest. I love you." "I love you too, sweetheart. Fly safe." After hanging up, Elaine sets her alarm for 4:30 a.m., early enough for her pre-flight rituals. She needs to be at her absolute best tomorrow. Something about this last-minute assignment feels off, though she can't place why. 22 years of flying has honed her intuition, that sixth sense pilots develop about when things aren't quite right. As she drifts to sleep, her mind returns to that cargo weight discrepancy. Probably nothing. But in aviation, the difference between probably nothing and catastrophe is often just a matter of attention to detail. The day begins the next day, finds Elaine arriving at O'Hare 3 hours early, as always. Her routine is methodical, almost ritualistic. She developed these habits as a young pilot, when every eye seemed to track her movements, waiting for the slightest mistake. Leather flight bag over her shoulder, she strides through Terminal 3, navigating the morning crowds with practiced ease. Outside, the November chill cuts through her uniform jacket. Chicago's famously fickle weather has turned from merely cold to positively bitter overnight, with a steady rain that threatens to become sleet. Whether that would complicate today's departure. At the crew entrance, she swipes her ID. The security guard glances between her face and the badge, his look lingering just a beat too long. Elaine is used to this, the subtle double-checking, the slight hesitation. After 22 years, these moments still register but no longer sting. "Good morning, Captain," he finally says, waving her through. "Morning, Carl," she replies, recognizing the guard from previous shifts. Building relationships with ground staff had been one of her strategies for navigating the complex social landscape of an industry that hadn't been built with her in mind. Remember names, ask about families, create allies in a world where too often she had to fight for the basic respect her position deserved. She makes her way to the crew lounge, nodding to familiar faces, flight attendants preparing for early departures, pilots hunched over coffee and flight plans. A few greet her by name. Others, newer hires who don't know her, show that flicker of surprise when they notice her captain's stripes, the momentary recalibration of expectations. In the pilot's briefing room, conversations halt momentarily as she enters. Three men in identical uniforms occupy the table near the weather monitors. First Officer Patrick Daniels, whom she's flown with before, competent, quiet, by the book. Relief floods his face when he sees her. "Captain Johnson," he says, standing to shake her hand. "Heard you were taking over for Reynolds." The other two men remain seated. One she recognizes as James Wilson, Director of Flight Operations, his silver hair exactly the same shade as when he'd interviewed her 15 years ago. His presence is unusual. Directors rarely attended routine flight briefings. The other is unfamiliar, young, maybe mid-30s, with a confidence that seems unearned. "Captain," Wilson says, not bothering to stand. "This is Ronald Weber. He'll be observing today's flight." "Observer?" Elaine asks, her internal alarms quietly chiming. "I wasn't notified of any check ride or evaluation." Weber smiles, all teeth and no warmth. "Just routine, Captain. New company policy. Random observation flights for quality assurance." Elaine has never heard of such a policy, but she nods professionally. 22 years of being the first or the only has taught her when to pick her battles. "If you'll excuse us," Wilson says, standing finally, "Weber and I have some matters to discuss before departure." The two men exit, leaving Elaine with First Officer Daniels. "What was that about?" she asks once they're alone. Daniels looks uncomfortable. "Not sure, Captain. Rumor has it the company's restructuring after the merger." "People are nervous," he hesitates. "Some say they're looking for reasons to furlough senior pilots, cost-cutting." The words hang between them. Senior pilots, the ones with the highest salaries, the ones like Elaine who'd reached captain status years ago, the ones most expensive to keep on payroll. "Well," Elaine says, settling into her chair and pulling out her flight plans, "they won't find any reasons with me. Let's review our route." For the next hour, they meticulously go through the flight plan from Chicago to San Francisco. Weather systems, fuel calculations, alternative landing sites, Elaine leaves nothing to chance. The forecast shows a significant storm system developing over the Rockies that might require a southerly deviation, adding time and fuel consumption to their journey. "Let's add an extra 15 minutes of reserve fuel," she decides. "That storm looks unpredictable." Daniels nods, making the notation. "Better safe than sorry." As they wrap up, her phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. "Need to speak with you. Urgent. Meet at Concourse C Coffee Shop." A former colleague. Elaine frowns at the cryptic message. With 45 minutes until boarding, curiosity wins out. "I'm going to grab coffee," she tells Daniels. "Want anything?" "I'm good, thanks. I'll finish inputting these calculations." At the busy airport coffee shop, Elaine scans the crowd until she spots a familiar face. Michael Torres, a former Central Airlines pilot who'd abruptly retired 6 months ago at age 49. Too young to leave voluntarily, many had speculated. They'd flown together occasionally over the years. Torres had been fair, professional, one of the good ones who judged by competence rather than appearance. "Elaine," he says, standing as she approaches his corner table. His face looks thinner than she remembers, worry lines etched deeper. "Thanks for coming." "Michael, this is unexpected." She slides into the seat across from him. "Your message sounded urgent." Torres glances around nervously before leaning forward. "You're flying to San Francisco today, flight 2187. Elaine nods, unease creeping up her spine. "How did you know that?" "It was supposed to be Reynolds, but he got food poisoning, right?" Torres makes air quotes around the words. "How did you know that?" "Because it's happening again." Torres runs a hand through his thinning hair. "Listen carefully. 3 months ago, I was scheduled for a San Francisco run. Last minute, I got bumped by management. The next day, I started hearing questions about my most recent physical, about my judgment on a turbulence incident from months earlier." "What are you saying, Michael?" 2 weeks later, I was called into Wilson's office. They had a file, complaints I'd never heard of, incidents that were exaggerated or fabricated. They offered early retirement or a review that would likely end with termination. He pauses. "I took the package, had no choice with my daughter's college tuition due." Elaine feels a chill despite the crowded terminal's warmth. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because it wasn't just me. Davis, Hernandez, Palmer, all senior captains, all pushed out after being removed from specific routes." He slides a napkin across the table. "These flights all had something in common: weight discrepancies in the cargo hold, maintenance logs with irregularities." Elaine stares at the list of flight numbers. Flight 2187 is circled at the bottom. "Someone's covering something up, Elaine, and they're eliminating pilots who might notice." Torres checks his watch nervously. "I've said too much already, just be careful, document everything, and watch the cargo manifest." Before Elaine can ask more questions, Torres stands abruptly. "I was never here," he says. "I've got a family to protect." He disappears into the terminal crowd, leaving Elaine with a napkin full of flight numbers and a mind racing with questions. The flight begins by the time she returns to the gate. Boarding has begun. Weber and Wilson stand near the jet bridge entrance, deep in conversation. They fall silent as she approaches. "Captain," Wilson says with a tight smile. "Cutting it close, aren't we?" "Plenty of time, sir," Elaine responds, professional as always. "If you'll excuse me, I need to complete my pre-flight checks." As she boards the aircraft, Elaine feels Weber's eyes following her. Inside, the flight crew greets her warmly. Lead flight attendant Sophia Reyes has worked with Elaine many times. "Captain Johnson," Sophia says, "didn't expect to see you today. Thought Reynolds was on the schedule." "Last-minute change," Elaine explains, heading toward the cockpit where Daniels is already running through preliminary systems checks. "Captain," he acknowledges as she takes the left seat, the command position. "Everything looks good so far. Ground crew reports a full load today." "I need to see the final cargo manifest," Elaine says, remembering Tor's warning. Daniels looks surprised but reaches for the clipboard. "Just came through, signed off by operations." Elaine studies the document carefully. The standard cargo, passenger, luggage, mail, commercial shipments appears normal. But there's an entry that catches her eye. "Special Equipment SFO Research Facility, 740 kg. The description is vague, the weight significant. "What's this special equipment listing?" she asks Daniels. He shrugs. "Doesn't say. Probably scientific instruments or something. San Francisco's got all those tech companies, biotech firms." Nothing seems immediately out of place, but Tor's warning echoes in her mind. She makes a mental note of the total weight, 4,572 kilograms of cargo plus luggage. "Did you verify these weights against the fuel calculations?" she asks. "Yes, Captain, everything balances." Daniels seems slightly defensive, perhaps wondering why she's questioning his thoroughness. "Good, standard pre-flight checklist," she says, setting the manifest aside for now. "Let's do this by the book." They proceed through the carefully choreographed routine of preparing a commercial airliner for departure. Outside the cockpit window, ground crew scurry around the massive Boeing 787, their orange vests bright against the gray November morning. Rain continues to fall, limiting visibility. Elaine runs her hand along the advanced glass cockpit displays, a far cry from the analog gauges of her early flying days. The 787 represents the cutting edge of commercial aviation technology, with its carbon fiber construction, efficient engines, and computerized systems. She loves this aircraft, its responsiveness, its elegant design. Just as they complete the checklist, a knock on the cockpit door interrupts them. Weber enters without waiting for a response. "Mind if I observe from the jump seat?" he asks, though his tone makes clear it's not really a question. "Of course," Elaine says coolly. "Though regulations require you to review our safety procedures first." Weber waves this off. "I'm a certified pilot, Captain. I'm familiar with emergency protocols." Elaine fixes him with a steady gaze. "Nevertheless, company and FAA regulations require a full briefing for any cockpit observer. I'm sure you understand the importance of following protocol, Mr. Weber." A flash of annoyance crosses his face, but he nods stiffly. "Of course, Captain." For the next 5 minutes, Elaine methodically explains the oxygen system, emergency exits, and communication procedures. She can sense Weber's impatience, but she doesn't rush. Safety is never compromised, not on her flight. Finally satisfied, she returns to her preparations while Weber settles into the observer seat behind them. The cabin crew reports all passengers boarded and secured. Ground operations confirms they're cleared for pushback. "Prepare for pushback," Elaine announces, her voice calm and authoritative over the public address system. "Flight attendants cross-check and prepare for departure." As the massive jet backs away from the gate, Elaine can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. Tor's warning, Weber's presence, Wilson's unusual involvement, all of it feels connected, but the pattern remains elusive. The taxi to the runway is smooth despite the rain. Chicago O'Hare spreads around them, one of the busiest airports in the world now slick with November rain. In the cockpit, Elaine and Daniels maintain the professional patter of experienced pilots, each communication acknowledged and confirmed. "Flight 2187, you're cleared for takeoff on runway 28 right," the tower announces. "Cleared for takeoff, runway 28 right, flight 2187, Elaine confirms, her voice steady. The powerful engines spool up, their roar filling the cockpit. Elaine feels the familiar push against her seat as the aircraft accelerates down the runway. Beside her, Daniels calls out speeds. "V1, rotate." Elaine pulls back on the yoke and the massive aircraft responds, lifting its nose toward the gray Illinois sky. Moments later, they're airborne, climbing through the rain clouds toward clearer air above. Positive rate, Daniels confirms. Gear up, Elaine responds, following the practiced choreography of departure. Behind them, Weber watches silently, making occasional notes on his tablet. His presence creates an unusual tension in the normally methodical environment of the cockpit. As they climb through 10,000 feet, Elaine notices something odd, a slight imbalance in the fuel consumption between the left and right engines. Nothing dangerous but unusual for this aircraft type. Are you seeing this fuel variance? She asks Daniels, keeping her voice casual. He checks his instruments. Left engine drawing about 3% more than right, within limits, but I'll keep an eye on it. Elaine makes a note in the flight log, documenting the exact time, altitude, and conditions. Behind her, she senses Weber shifting in his seat, suddenly more attentive. By the time they reach cruising altitude of 38,000 feet, the fuel discrepancy has stabilized but not disappeared. Elaine continues to monitor it while maintaining her outward composure. Years of being scrutinized have made her exceptional at projecting calm while remaining vigilant. Weber finally breaks his silence. Notice that fuel variance, Captain? Yes, Elaine responds evenly. Well within operational parameters, but we're monitoring it closely. Interesting, is all he says before returning to his tablet. The next hour passes without incident. They cross into Nebraska airspace, leaving the worst of the Chicago weather behind. Sunlight streams through the cockpit windows as they rise above the cloud layer, the brilliant blue of high-altitude skies surrounding them. This is what Elaine loves most, the serene beauty of cruising above the earth, the perspective it brings. She thinks of her father, who never got to see her command a jet like this. He died proud of her Air Force career, but before she'd achieved her ultimate goal of becoming a commercial airline captain, he would have loved sitting here seeing his daughter in command of this technological marvel. How long have you been with Central, Captain Johnson? Weber asks, breaking into her thoughts. 15 years, she replies. Before that, 10 years with the Air Force flying C-130s. Military trained, impressive. His tone doesn't match his words. And always on the 787. I've qualified on multiple aircraft types. Started on the 737, moved to the 767, then transitioned to the 787 when the airline acquired them 6 years ago. Quite the career trajectory. Again, his words sound complimentary, but his tone suggests something else. Skepticism, perhaps, or probing for weakness. I've been fortunate, Elaine says simply, refusing to be drawn into whatever game he's playing. Daniels, sensing the tension, interjects. Captain Johnson has one of the best safety records in the fleet. She's instructed on the simulator for the past 5 years, too. Weber doesn't respond to this, instead asking, any incidents or near misses in your career, Captain? Now his intention becomes clear. He's fishing for problems, for mistakes. Every pilot encounters situations requiring judgment and skill, Mr. Weber. That's why we train so extensively. Elaine keeps her eyes on her instruments, her voice professional. If you have specific questions about my record, I'm sure Human Resources would be happy to provide my file. Weber falls silent again, but Elaine can feel his eyes on her, evaluating, searching for any sign of weakness or error. She won't give him the satisfaction. 3 hours into the flight, as they cross over the Rocky Mountains, Sophia knocks on the cockpit door. Daniels checks the security camera and buzzes her in. Captain, Sophia says, we have a situation in the cabin. A passenger is having what appears to be an allergic reaction. We have a doctor on board who's assisting, but she's asking if we have additional medical equipment beyond the standard kit. Elaine makes a quick decision. First Officer Daniels has the aircraft. I'll come assess the situation. She stands, transferring control to Daniels with the standard protocol, and follows Sophia into the cabin. The passenger, an elderly man, sits near the back of the plane, his face flushed and breathing labored. A middle-aged woman identifies herself as Dr. Patel. Possible anaphylaxis, the doctor explains. I've administered the epinephrine from the kit, but he may need a second dose soon. His blood pressure is dropping. Elaine assesses the situation quickly. They're currently over the mountains of Colorado, at least 30 minutes from the nearest suitable airport. The standard medical kit contains only one epinephrine auto-injector. Sir, she addresses the passenger directly, we're going to take care of you. I need to check our emergency protocols, and I'll be right back. In the forward galley, Elaine speaks quickly with Sophia. Contact dispatch. Tell them we have a medical emergency and may need to divert. Have them alert medical facilities in. She checks her mental map. Grand Junction. It's the closest adequate facility. Sophia nods and reaches for the aircraft communication system. Elaine returns to the cockpit where Weber still sits, watching everything. Medical emergency, she explains to Daniels. Possible diversion to Grand Junction. I'm checking our enhanced medical kit. All commercial airlines maintain a separate, more comprehensive medical kit beyond the standard one accessible to flight attendants. Elaine unlocks the compartment where it's stored and reviews its contents. Inside, she finds an additional epinephrine injector, exactly what they need. As she's about to return to the cabin, Weber speaks up. "Captain, are you certain diversion is necessary? It would mean significant delays, additional fuel costs." Elaine turns to him slowly. "Mr. Weber, we have a passenger in medical distress. His needs take priority over any schedule or cost considerations." Of course, Weber backpedals quickly. "I merely suggested. I understand your suggestion," Elaine cuts him off firmly. "But as captain of this aircraft, passenger safety is my only concern right now." She returns to the passenger with the additional medication, which Dr. Patel administers promptly. Within minutes, the man's condition begins to stabilize. His color improves and his breathing becomes less labored. "Thank you, Captain," Dr. Patel says. "I believe we've got the reaction under control now. He should be stable for the remainder of the flight, but I'll continue to monitor him." Elaine crouches beside the passenger's seat. "Sir, we're prepared to divert to get you immediate medical attention if necessary. How are you feeling?" The man, probably in his 70s, manages a weak smile. "Better now, don't want to inconvenience everyone." "Your health isn't an inconvenience," Elaine assures him. "But if the doctor believes you're stable, we can continue to San Francisco. There will be medical personnel meeting us at the gate." After confirming with the doctor that an immediate diversion is no longer necessary, Elaine returns to the cockpit. The tension between her and Weber is palpable now, his earlier comment having crossed a line that no aviation professional should approach. "The passenger is stabilizing," she informs Daniels. "Dr. Patel will continue to monitor him. We'll proceed to San Francisco as planned unless his condition changes." "Copy that, Captain," Daniels responds, relief evident in his voice. For the next hour, the flight proceeds without incident. The fuel variance stabilizes further, though Elaine continues to note it in the log. Weber remains silent, still making occasional entries on his tablet. As they begin their descent into the San Francisco Bay Area, Elaine notices another anomaly, a slight vibration through the control yoke, almost imperceptible but definitely there. She checks the engine parameters again, then the wing de-icing systems. "Are you feeling that?" she asks Daniels. He focuses for a moment. "Very slight, could be normal turbulence from the weather system ahead." San Francisco International had reported rain and gusty winds, conditions that could certainly explain minor vibrations. Still, Elaine's instincts, honed through thousands of flight hours, tell her something isn't quite right. "Run a quick systems diagnostic," she instructs. "Let's rule out any mechanical issues before we begin our approach." The diagnostic reveals nothing unusual, yet the vibration persists, subtle but definite. Elaine makes another detailed entry in the log. This time, she's certain she sees Weber frown. "Tower, this is Central 2187, she radios as they approach the Bay Area. "We're experiencing a minor vibration that may be weather-related, but I'd like to request a maintenance check upon arrival." "Copy that, Central 2187, the controller responds. "We'll alert ground operations. You're cleared for the ILS approach to runway 28 right. Winds 270 at 15 knots, gusting to 25. "Thank you, Tower. Beginning our approach now." The approach into San Francisco is challenging under the best conditions, with hills surrounding the bay and frequently changing weather patterns. Today's gusty winds add another layer of complexity. Elaine handles the aircraft with precision born of experience, compensating for crosswinds as they descend through rain clouds. The runway appears through the mist, its lights glowing in the gray afternoon. Elaine makes minute adjustments, keeping the aircraft perfectly aligned despite the gusting winds. The subtle vibration continues but doesn't worsen. 100, the automated system announces their height above the runway. "Continuing," Elaine confirms, hands steady on the controls. 50, 40, 30, 20. The 787 touches down smoothly despite the conditions, exactly where Elaine intended on the rain-slicked runway. She applies reverse thrust, feeling the aircraft decelerate steadily. "Nice landing, Captain," Daniels says with genuine admiration. Weber says nothing. After taxiing to their gate, Elaine completes the shutdown checklist and makes her final notes about the fuel discrepancy and the vibration, emphasizing the need for maintenance inspection before the aircraft's next departure. "Thank you for a safe flight, gentlemen," she says professionally. "Mr. Weber, I trust you found our adherence to procedures satisfactory?" Weber offers a tight smile. "I'll be submitting my report to management." With that cryptic response, he exits the cockpit. Elaine and Daniels exchange glances. That was strange, Daniels says quietly. Very, Elaine agrees. I'm going to stay and speak with the maintenance team about these issues. The passengers deplane while Elaine discusses her concerns with the San Francisco maintenance crew. She's thorough, describing exactly what she experienced and insisting they pay special attention to the engine fuel flow regulators and the wing de-icing system where she suspects the vibration originated. By the time she enters the terminal, most passengers have dispersed. The flight crew waits to board the shuttle to their hotel, but Weber and Wilson are nowhere to be seen. Elaine checks her phone and finds a message from scheduling. Captain Johnson, please report to SFO Operations Office immediately. A sense of foreboding washes over her. This is unusual. Typically, any debriefing would happen back at the home base in Chicago. She tells the crew to go ahead without her and makes her way to the operations office. The confrontation inside the San Francisco operations office, she finds Wilson and Weber waiting, along with a woman she doesn't recognize who introduces herself as Margaret Chen from Human Resources. Captain Johnson, Wilson begins, his tone formal. Mr. Weber has raised some concerns about today's flight that we need to address immediately. What concerns? Elaine asks, her guard immediately up. Weber taps his tablet. I observed several instances of questionable judgment, Captain. Your decision to nearly divert for a medical situation that resolved itself. Your repeated focus on minor mechanical issues that were clearly within normal parameters. Your insistence on delaying the flight for unnecessary maintenance checks. Elaine stares at him in disbelief. Those weren't unnecessary. There was a genuine medical emergency and the aircraft experienced anomalies that required documentation and inspection. According to our systems, Weber continues as if she hadn't spoken, all parameters were normal throughout the flight. Your anomalies don't appear in any of the automated logs. This can't be right. Elaine had felt the vibration herself. The fuel discrepancy had been visible on their instruments. Daniels had seen it too. First Officer Daniels will confirm my observations, she says firmly. We've already spoken with First Officer Daniels, Wilson interjects. He indicated that while you mentioned these concerns, he didn't observe anything significant himself. Elaine feels as though the floor is shifting beneath her feet. Daniels had acknowledged the fuel variance. He discussed the vibration with her. Why would he deny it now? Furthermore, Weber adds, your decision to leave the cockpit during flight to address a passenger issue personally was unnecessary and potentially compromised flight safety. You could have handled it via cabin crew communication. I made a judgment call based on the severity of the situation, Elaine defends herself. As captain, that's my responsibility. Wilson sighs heavily, as if disappointed. Captain Johnson, these concerns, combined with some previous documentation in your file. What previous documentation? Elaine interrupts. I have a perfect record, 22 years without a single incident. Margaret Chen from HR speaks for the first time. There have been some recent additions to your file, Captain. Reports of questionable decision-making on previous flights. Concerns about your interactions with ground crews. That's impossible, Elaine says, her voice rising despite her efforts to remain calm. Those reports would have been brought to my attention immediately. That's company policy. Nevertheless, Wilson continues, given these concerns, we're temporarily suspending your captain privileges pending a full review. You'll remain on pay status, but you won't be scheduled to fly until the review is complete. The pieces suddenly fall into place for Elaine. Tor's warning, the last-minute assignment to this specific flight, Weber's presence, the manufactured concerns. This isn't about her performance. This is about Flight 2187 and whatever the airline is trying to hide. This is discrimination, she says directly. You're targeting me because I'm documenting issues you don't want addressed. Wilson's face hardens. That's a serious accusation, Captain. One that could further complicate your situation. It's a threat, plain and simple. I need to return to Chicago, Elaine says, buying time to think. When will this review take place? You'll be notified, Chen says vaguely. In the meantime, you're booked on tomorrow morning's flight back to Chicago. The company will cover your hotel tonight. Elaine leaves the office, her mind racing. The hallway outside feels too bright, too sterile. She needs air, needs to think. 22 years of exemplary service, and they're trying to push her out over manufactured concerns. Just like Tor's, just like the others. In the hotel lobby, she tries calling Daniels but gets no answer. She sends a text. Need to talk about today's flight. Urgent. No response. She thinks about calling her brother Marcus, an attorney in Chicago, but holds off. Not enough evidence yet. Just suspicions and Tor's cryptic warning. In her room, she pulls out the napkin Tor's gave her with the list of flights. She begins researching, using the hotel's Wi-Fi to access public flight records. A pattern slowly emerges. All the flights had originated from or were bound for San Francisco. All had carried cargo in addition to passengers. All had experienced last-minute pilot changes. She thinks about the fuel discrepancy, the vibration. What if they weren't mechanical issues at all? What if they were symptoms of something else, something in the cargo hold? The special equipment listing on the manifest nags at her. 740 kilograms, significant weight, vague description. What was Central Airlines really transporting? Her phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Lobby bar, 20 minutes, come alone. Friend of tours. Elaine hesitates, uncertain whether to trust this mysterious contact. But she needs answers, and right now, this is her only lead. The revelation 20 minutes later, she sits in a corner of the dimly lit hotel bar. A woman approaches, mid-30s, casually dressed in jeans and a Stanford sweatshirt, nothing about her suggesting a connection to airlines or aviation. Captain Johnson? The woman asks quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. I'm Lisa Nakamura. I work for the NTSB. The National Transportation Safety Board, the federal agency responsible for investigating aviation accidents and safety issues. Elaine feels a mix of relief and apprehension. How did you know to contact me? Elaine asks. Michael Torres reached out to us 3 months ago with concerns about cargo irregularities at Central Airlines. We've been quietly investigating, but without hard evidence or a current pilot willing to go on record, we've been limited in what we can do. Lisa leans forward. Torres said you experienced anomalies on today's flight. For the next half hour, Elaine details everything. The fuel discrepancy, the vibration, the confrontation with management, the sudden documentation in her previously spotless record. Lisa takes notes. This matches patterns we've seen in Torres' case and others. We believe Central Airlines may be transporting undocumented cargo, possibly hazardous materials that require special handling and declarations. They're using specific flights and removing pilots who might notice discrepancies. Why would they take such risks? Elaine asks. Money, Lisa says simply. Proper hazmat transportation is expensive and heavily regulated. Bypassing those regulations saves millions but puts everyone at risk, passengers, crew, the public below the flight path. I need proof, Elaine says. They're trying to discredit me just like they did to Torres and the others. Lisa slides a small device across the table. It looks like an ordinary USB drive. This is a specialized scanner. If you can get near the cargo hold of Flight 2187 before it departs tomorrow, it might detect chemical or radiation signatures that shouldn't be there. Elaine takes the device, understanding the risk Lisa is taking by providing it. And if I find something, document it and contact me immediately. We'll take it from there. Lisa stands to leave. Be careful, Captain. These people have already shown they'll destroy careers to protect whatever they're hiding. After Lisa departs, Elaine sits alone, turning the scanner over in her hands. Using it means risking not just her suspension becoming permanent termination, but potentially criminal charges for interfering with an aircraft without authorization. Yet doing nothing means allowing Central Airlines to continue putting lives at risk while discarding dedicated pilots who might expose them. The choice, she realizes, isn't really a choice at all, not for someone who has dedicated her life to aviation safety. Back in her hotel room, Elaine can't sleep. The walls seem to close in around her as she weighs her options, the risks, the potential consequences. Her entire identity is wrapped up in being a pilot. Since that first day her father had lifted her onto his shoulders at the lakeshore, pointing to the plains overhead, she'd never wanted to be anything else. She thinks of her mother, dependent on her income for the expensive memory care that keeps her safe and comfortable in her final years. She thinks of the mortgage on her Chicago apartment, the loans she's still repaying from flight school. The practical consequences of losing her career at age 48 would be devastating. But she also thinks of those 347 passengers on today's flight, the families waiting for them. The blind trust they place in their pilots, in the system, in the regulations designed to keep them safe. If Central Airlines is cutting corners on hazardous materials transport, those lives are at risk. Every flight, every day. She remembers her Air Force days, flying into combat zones where the risks were clear and accepted. This is different. Passengers boarding commercial flights have no idea they might be sitting above improperly secured hazardous cargo. They haven't consented to that risk. By morning, her decision is made. She will get the evidence, whatever the personal cost. Gathering evidence the next morning, Elaine arrives at San Francisco International 3 hours before her flight back to Chicago. Dressed in her full uniform despite her suspended status. The uniform provides access and authority. She heads not to her departure gate, but toward the maintenance hangars where Flight 2187 is being prepared for its return journey to Chicago. Her Central Airlines ID still works, getting her through the security checkpoints. She projects confidence, nodding professionally to ground crew as she passes. In aviation, looking like you belong is often enough to avoid questions. She locates Flight 2187 in Hangar C, undergoing routine maintenance before its afternoon departure. Several mechanics work around the aircraft, but the cargo hold stands open and momentarily unattended as crews take a break between shifts. Elaine approaches casually, clipboard in hand as if conducting an inspection. She activates Lisa's scanner, slipping it into her pocket where it can still function. As she walks around the open cargo bay, making notes on her clipboard to maintain her cover, the device vibrates against her thigh, a positive reading. Her heart races, but she maintains her professional demeanor. She peers into the cargo hold, noting several containers marked only with generic shipping labels. One particular container, secured toward the rear of the hold, bears minimal markings, just a serial number and a destination code. She manages to snap several photos of the cargo area with her phone, being careful to include the aircraft's registration number visible on the fuselage. Just as she finishes, a voice calls out behind her. "Captain Johnson, what are you doing here?" She turns to find Ronald Weber approaching, his face a mask of suspicion. "Final inspection," she says smoothly. "I had concerns about this aircraft yesterday. As the last captain to fly it, I wanted to follow up personally." Weber's eyes narrow. "You're on administrative leave. You have no authority to inspect this or any aircraft." "I'm still a certified captain," Elaine counters, "and I have a responsibility to report safety concerns." "What you have," Weber says coldly, "is a trespassing situation. Security is on their way. I suggest you leave immediately before this becomes a criminal matter." Elaine knows she's gotten what she came for. The scanner detected something and she has photographic evidence. Pressing further would only risk exposure. "I was just leaving," she says, matching his cold tone. She walks away with measured steps, fighting the urge to run. Behind her, she hears Weber speaking urgently into his phone. At her departure gate, Elaine finds a quiet corner and calls Lisa Nakamura, keeping her voice low. The scanner got a positive reading. "I have photos showing unmarked containers in the cargo area. Send everything to this secure email," Lisa instructs, providing an address. "Then get on your flight and come home. We'll take it from here." As Elaine boards her flight to Chicago, she feels Weber's eyes on her from the terminal. He watches until she disappears down the jet bridge, his expression unreadable. The flight home passes in a blur of anxiety and determination. Elaine has crossed a line. There's no going back now. Upon landing at O'Hare, she switches on her phone to find multiple missed calls from Central Airlines Human Resources and a text message from an unknown number. "Need to meet. Critical information about your situation. Coffee shop across from Central HQ. 4 p.m. today." Suspicious but desperate for allies, Elaine makes her way to the meeting place. The coffee shop buzzes with afternoon customers, many in airline uniforms from the nearby headquarters building. A back corner, she spots Sophia Reyes, the lead flight attendant from yesterday's flight. "Sophia," Elaine says, surprised to see her. "You sent that text?" Sophia nods, looking nervously around the cafe. "Sit down, Captain, please." Elaine slides into the booth across from her. "What's going on? Why all the secrecy?" "After we landed yesterday, First Officer Daniels was taken into a private meeting with Weber and Wilson," Sophia explains in a hushed voice. "When he came out, he looked defeated. He told me they pressured him to contradict your report about the anomalies during the flight. And he caved," Elaine says, the betrayal still fresh. "They threatened his pension," Sophia says, "showed him evidence that he'd violated protocols on previous flights, said they'd terminate him with cause if he didn't cooperate." She pauses. "He has 3 kids in college, Captain. They had him cornered." Elaine softens slightly, understanding the impossible position Daniels had been placed in. "Why are you telling me this? They could do the same to you." "Because it's not just about jobs anymore," Sophia says, pulling out her phone. She shows Elaine a news article from 6 months ago. A small cargo plane crashed near Sacramento. 2 pilots killed, the cause still under investigation. "I don't understand," Elaine says. "That company was a subsidiary of Central," Sophia explains. "My cousin worked in their dispatch office. After the crash, she started asking questions about their cargo manifests. 2 weeks later, she was fired. A month after that," Sophia's voice breaks. "A month after that, she died in a car accident. Police said brake failure." Elaine feels a chill run through her. "You think it was connected?" "I don't know," Sophia admits. "But 3 days before the accident, she told me she'd found proof that Central was illegally transporting hazardous materials. She was going to take it to the authorities." Sophia slides a small envelope across the table. "She gave me this for safekeeping. I didn't understand what it meant until I heard what happened to you yesterday." Inside the envelope, Elaine finds a USB drive and a handwritten note with access credentials to a secure cloud storage service. Whatever they're hiding, Sophia says, it's worth destroying careers to protect, maybe worse. Elaine pockets the envelope. Thank you, Sophia, this is a huge risk you're taking. Just be careful, Captain, whatever you do with that information. Watch your back. As Sophia leaves, Elaine feels the weight of the USB drive in her pocket, physical evidence potentially linking Central Airlines to illegal activities and possibly even deaths. The stakes have risen dramatically. She's considering her next move when her phone rings, Margaret Chen from HR. Captain Johnson, your presence is required at headquarters immediately for your review hearing. 14th floor, conference room B, 1 hour. The timing can't be coincidental. Somehow, they know she's gathered evidence. This review is likely an attempt to terminate her before she can use it. Elaine makes a quick decision. She calls Lisa Nakamura. They're moving faster than we expected. I have additional evidence from another source, but they've called me in for a surprise review that's obviously a termination meeting. Don't go, Lisa advises. We need more time to build our case. If I don't show up, they'll terminate me for insubordination, Elaine explains. I need to buy time. Be extremely careful, Lisa warns. Admit nothing about your investigation. Record everything if you can. The hearing Elaine activates her phone's recording app and slips it into her uniform pocket before entering Central Airlines headquarters. The security guard at the front desk gives her a curious look. News of her suspension has clearly spread, but her ID still grants her access. The 14th floor houses executive offices. Elaine has rarely had reason to come here. The hallways are eerily quiet compared to the operational floors below. Conference room B stands at the end of a long corridor. Inside, Wilson and Weber wait alongside Margaret Chen and a man Elaine doesn't recognize, older, gray-haired, wearing an expensive suit. Captain Johnson, Wilson begins formally. This is Harold Blackwood, General Counsel for Central Airlines. A lawyer's presence confirms Elaine's suspicions. This isn't a review, but a termination proceeding. Let me get straight to the point, Blackwood says, his voice practiced and smooth. Your recent behavior has raised serious concerns about your judgment and adherence to company policies. Your unauthorized presence in the maintenance hangar this morning is particularly troubling. I was following up on safety concerns documented in my flight log, Elaine responds calmly. As a captain, that's not only my right but my responsibility. You were on administrative leave, Weber interjects. You had no authority to be anywhere near that aircraft. My FAA certification doesn't disappear because of an administrative decision, Elaine counters. If I observe safety issues, I'm legally obligated to follow up on them regardless of my status with the airline. Blackwood slides a document across the table. We're prepared to offer you a separation agreement. 6 months' salary as severance, continued health benefits through the end of the year, and a neutral reference for future employment. In exchange, you agree to resign immediately and sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding your employment with Central. Elaine doesn't touch the document. And if I refuse? Then we'll proceed with termination for cause, Chen says. Your unauthorized access to a maintenance area while on administrative leave constitutes a serious security violation. You'll receive no severance and will be obligated to report the violation to the FAA, which could affect your pilot's license. It's a well-constructed trap. Sign away her rights and walk away, or fight and risk losing everything, including her ability to ever fly commercially again. I need time to consider this, Elaine says, and to consult with my own legal counsel. We need an answer today, Wilson insists. The separation agreement expires at 5 p.m. That's not reasonable, Elaine responds. Employment law entitles me to at least 7 days to review a severance agreement. You know that, Mr. Blackwood. The lawyer's expression tightens, but he nods reluctantly. Fine, you have until noon tomorrow, not a minute longer. As Elaine stands to leave, Weber speaks up again. One more thing, Captain. Company property must be returned immediately upon separation. That includes your ID, uniform insignia, and any electronic devices or data related to Central Airlines operations. The message is clear. They know she has evidence and they want it back. Of course, Elaine says neutrally, everything will be returned appropriately. Outside the building, Elaine calls Lisa Nakamura again. They're offering a severance package with an NDA. If I don't take it, they're threatening to terminate me for cause and report me to the FAA. They're scared, Lisa says. Do you still have the evidence from Sophia Reyes? Yes, but I haven't had a chance to review it yet. I need you to get to a secure location and send me everything you have. We're ready to move on this, but we need all the evidence compiled first. Building the case, Elaine heads to her brother Marcus's law office. As a partner in a respected Chicago firm, he has both the secure facilities she needs and the legal expertise to navigate what's coming. Marcus Johnson's corner office offers a panoramic view of Lake Michigan. but neither sibling spares a glance for the scenery today. 10 years older than Elaine, Marcus had always been her protector, her advocate. When their father had taken on extra postal routes to help pay for her flight school, Marcus had contributed from his first lawyer's salary. When she'd faced discrimination in the Air Force, his legal advice had helped her navigate the system without derailing her career. Marcus listens intently as Elaine explains everything that's happened. His expression grows increasingly grave. "This is serious, Elaine. We're talking about potential federal violations, hazardous materials transport regulations, possibly fraud, potentially even negligent homicide if they can be linked to that cargo plane crash." He shakes his head. "These people won't just roll over because you have some evidence. They'll fight, and they'll fight dirty." "I know," Elaine says. "But I can't walk away from this, Marcus. Lives are at stake." "Then let's do this right." Marcus rolls up his sleeves. "Let's see what's on that USB drive." The drive contains dozens of files, internal emails discussing special cargo arrangements, modified weight and balance calculations, instructions for diverting specific types of cargo to certain flights, and most damning of all, records of payments to a shell company for regulatory compliance assistance that appears to be nothing more than bribes to bypass hazmat inspections. One email from Wilson to Weber, dated just 3 months ago, explicitly discusses the need to maintain plausible deniability regarding certain cargo shipments. Another, from Weber to the Cargo Operations Director, identifies specific flights, including 2187, as designated special handling routes with instructions to ensure minimal documentation and maximum discretion. "This is explosive," Marcus says as they go through the files. "But we need to be careful how we use it. Wrongful termination is one thing, but these documents could trigger federal criminal investigations." "That's exactly what needs to happen," Elaine insists. "The NTSB is already investigating, but they needed evidence like this." Marcus nods thoughtfully. "Then our strategy is clear. We don't just fight your termination, we use it as leverage. If they want to avoid public exposure, they'll have to back down on your case. And if they don't, then we go nuclear," Marcus says simply. "We take everything to the NTSB, the FAA, and the Department of Transportation simultaneously. Once it's in the hands of federal investigators, Central can't make it disappear." They spend hours organizing the evidence, preparing secure backups, and developing a strategy. By midnight, they've compiled a comprehensive case file and sent encrypted copies to Lisa Nakamura at the NTSB. "Get some rest," Marcus advises as Elaine prepares to leave. "Tomorrow's going to be intense." But rest proves elusive. At her apartment, Elaine finds signs of a hasty search, drawers slightly ajar, papers disturbed, her laptop moved from where she'd left it. Nothing appears to be missing, but the message is clear. They're desperate enough to break the law to find what she knows. She calls Marcus immediately. "They've been in my apartment." "That crosses another line," he says, anger evident in his voice. "We need to move faster. Can you come back to the office now?" "On my way." They work through the night, finalizing their strategy. By morning, they're ready. The confrontation at precisely noon, Elaine walks back into Central Airlines headquarters, Marcus at her side. This time, they head not to the 14th floor, but to the executive suite on the 20th, the office of CEO Richard Collins. Collins's assistant tries to block their entry, but Marcus is prepared. "Please inform Mr. Collins that Captain Elaine Johnson and her attorney are here regarding evidence of federal hazardous materials violations that will be delivered to regulatory authorities at 1 p.m. today unless we have a satisfactory resolution." The assistant's eyes widen. She disappears into Collins's office, returning moments later. "Mr. Collins will see you now." Inside the spacious corner office, they find not just Collins, but also Wilson, Weber, and Blackwood. All look tense. "This is highly irregular," Collins begins, but Marcus cuts him off. "With respect, sir, what's irregular is illegally transporting undeclared hazardous materials on passenger aircraft, falsifying cargo manifests, bribing inspectors, and breaking into my client's home to destroy evidence." He places a thick folder on Collins's desk. "This is a copy of the evidence we've compiled. The originals have been secured with multiple third parties and will be automatically delivered to federal authorities in exactly," he checks his watch, "47 minutes unless we reach an agreement." The room falls silent. Collins opens the folder, scanning its contents with increasing alarm. He looks up at Blackwood. "Is this legitimate?" The lawyer's face has gone pale. "We should discuss this privately, sir." "No," Elaine says firmly. "No more private discussions. This stops now." She steps forward, meeting Collins's gaze directly. "For the past year, your company has been using specific flights, including Flight 2187, to transport undeclared hazardous materials. When pilots noticed discrepancies, they were removed from those routes and eventually forced out of the company. Collins looks genuinely shocked. These are serious allegations, Captain Johnson. They're not allegations, Marcus interjects. They're documented facts. Email trails, financial records, cargo manifests with discrepancies, all pointing to a systematic effort to bypass hazmat regulations for profit. Weber starts to protest, but Collins silences him with a raised hand. What do you want? Marcus slides a document across the desk. Full reinstatement for Captain Johnson with back pay and removal of all negative documentation from her file. Written apologies to her and all pilots who were forced out under similar circumstances, with offers of reinstatement. And most importantly, immediate cessation of all illegal hazardous materials transport, with full disclosure to the appropriate authorities. That's outrageous, Weber sputters. You can't prove any of this is connected to management. This was likely the work of rogue employees in cargo operations. Elaine fixes him with a steady gaze. The emails connecting you directly to the special cargo program suggest otherwise, Mr. Weber, as do the recordings of you pressuring pilots to ignore discrepancies. Weber's face drains of color. You're bluffing. We don't bluff, Marcus says simply. 39 minutes remaining, gentlemen. Collins stands abruptly. Everyone out except Captain Johnson and her attorney. Now. Wilson, Weber, and Blackwood file out, leaving Elaine and Marcus alone with the CEO. Off the record, Collins says once the door closes, how bad is it? Federal prison bad, Marcus replies without hesitation. For multiple executives. Collins runs a hand through his thinning hair. I knew nothing about this, I swear it. Your ignorance doesn't change the legal exposure to the company, Marcus points out. Either way, Central Airlines faces potential criminal charges, massive fines, and civil liability. What if we agree to your terms but handle the disclosure internally? Collins asks. Allow us to self-report the violations rather than having this explode publicly. Marcus glances at Elaine, who nods slightly. We could consider that under specific conditions, full cooperation with authorities, no attempts to minimize the violations, and complete transparency about who was responsible. And Captain Johnson's position, non-negotiable, Elaine says firmly. Full reinstatement, cleared record, and protection from any future retaliation. Collins nods slowly. I need to make some calls. Can you give me 20 minutes? The clock is still ticking, Marcus reminds him. For the next 20 minutes, they wait in tense silence as Collins makes a series of hushed phone calls from an adjoining room. Finally, he returns. Here's what I can do, he says. Captain Johnson is reinstated immediately with full back pay and benefits, all negative documentation removed from her file. A written apology will be issued to her and any other affected pilots, with offers of reinstatement where appropriate. And the hazardous materials violations, Marcus presses. We will conduct a full internal investigation, overseen by an independent third party, and self-report all findings to the FAA and NTSB. Those responsible will be terminated and their actions referred to appropriate authorities for potential criminal prosecution. Marcus looks to Elaine. It's her decision. After a moment's consideration, she nods. Acceptable with one addition. I want to be part of the Safety Oversight Committee that ensures this never happens again. Collins extends his hand. Agreed. As they prepare to leave, Collins asks one final question. Was the timer real? Would everything have been released at 1 o'clock? Marcus smiles thinly. Your company broke into my client's home last night, Mr. Collins. What do you think? Aftermath outside the building, Elaine finally allows herself to breathe normally again. Do you think they'll honor the agreement? They don't have a choice, Marcus assures her. We still have all the evidence. If they renege, we release everything. What about Weber and Wilson? They'll try to save themselves. Let them try, Marcus says confidently. Their names are all over those documents. Their days at Central are numbered, and they know it. In the weeks that follow, the promised changes begin to materialize. The next morning, Elaine receives official notification of her reinstatement. By afternoon, the news has spread throughout the airline. Pilots and flight attendants send messages of support, many revealing they'd also noticed discrepancies but had been afraid to speak up. Michael Torres receives a call from Human Resources offering reinstatement with back pay. So do 3 other pilots who had been forced out under similar circumstances, all except knowing that the climate at Central is changing. A week later, Central Airlines announces a comprehensive safety review following the discovery of procedural irregularities in cargo handling. Weber, Wilson, and 3 executives from the cargo division are placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The NTSB quietly expands its investigation of the Sacramento crash, with Lisa Nakamura leading a team that examines possible connections to improperly transported hazardous materials. Sophia Reyes is appointed to a newly formed Flight Attendant Safety Council, giving cabin crew a formal voice in operational safety matters for the first time in the airline's history. 2 weeks after her reinstatement, Elaine reports for duty at O'Hare, her captain's uniform immaculate as always. In the crew briefing room, she finds First Officer Daniels waiting nervously. "Captain Johnson," he says, unable to meet her eyes. I'm sorry. They threatened everything I'd worked for." "Should have stood with you." Elaine regards him for a long moment. "Fear makes people do things they regret, First Officer. The question is what you do after the fear passes." "I've given a full statement to the investigation team," he says. "Everything they made me say, everything I actually saw during our flight, all of it." Elaine nods. "Then let's get through this flight by the book. We'll sort out the rest later." As they walk toward their aircraft, Sophia Reyes joins them, her smile warm but her eyes serious. "Good to have you back, Captain." "Good to be back," Elaine replies. "Thank you for what you did, for what your cousin tried to do." Sophia nods solemnly. She would be proud to see things changing. At the aircraft, Elaine performs her pre-flight inspection with even more attention to detail than usual. Every system, every component checked and verified. In the cockpit, she reviews the flight plan and cargo manifest with meticulous care. This time, she notes with satisfaction, the hazardous materials section is properly completed, with detailed descriptions of contents, weights, and safety classifications. As she settles into the captain's seat, her hand brushes against the family photo she always keeps in her flight bag, her parents standing proudly beside her on the day of her Air Force graduation. Her father's words echo in her mind. "They'll give you 1,000 reasons why you don't belong. Give them one undeniable reason why you do." She had done exactly that, not just for herself, but for everyone who would fly in these skies. "Everything in order, Captain?" Daniels asks as they complete their preparations. Elaine thinks of her journey, from the locked cockpit door just weeks ago to her reinstatement, and the ongoing investigation that's already uncovered dozens of safety violations. She thinks of Tor's, of Sophia's cousin, of all the pilots who stood up for safety despite the personal cost. "Yes, First Officer," she says with quiet confidence. "For the first time in a long while, everything is exactly as it should be." 6 months later, a bright spring day finds Elaine testifying before a congressional subcommittee on aviation safety. The investigation that began with her stand against Central Airlines has expanded, revealing industry-wide problems with hazardous materials handling, whistleblower protections, and safety oversight. "Captain Johnson," the committee chair asks, "based on your experience, what changes would you recommend to prevent similar situations in the future?" Elaine leans into the microphone, aware that her words will reach far beyond this wood-paneled room. "We need 3 fundamental changes. First, strengthened whistleblower protections that shield aviation professionals who report safety concerns. Second, independent oversight of hazardous materials transport with regular, unannounced inspections. And third, a cultural shift that values safety over profits at every level of operation." Later that day, she meets with Lisa Nakamura, now leading an expanded NTSB task force. "The Sacramento crash investigation is concluding," Lisa tells her. "The evidence confirms what we suspected: improperly secured hazardous chemicals shifted during flight, damaging critical systems. It was preventable." "And the criminal investigation?" "Proceeding. Weber and Wilson have both taken plea deals in exchange for testimony against higher-ups. The U.S. attorney believes they'll secure convictions against everyone involved in the scheme." That evening, Elaine visits her mother at Lakeside Memory Care. The facility is bright and clean, the staff attentive. Her mother doesn't always recognize her now, the disease having progressed, but today is a good day. "There's my flying girl," her mother says, eyes brightening as Elaine enters the room. "You bring pictures of the clouds." It's their ritual. Elaine always brings photos taken from the cockpit, images of sunrise above cloud layers, of mountain ranges seen from 38,000 feet, of storm systems viewed from above. Her mother can no longer remember Elaine's accomplishments, her battles, her victories, but she still loves seeing the world from her daughter's perspective. "I brought something better today, Mom," Elaine says, pulling out a small velvet box. "They gave me this yesterday." Inside rests the FAA's Distinguished Service Medal, awarded for her contributions to aviation safety. The accompanying citation praises her exceptional courage in the face of institutional pressure and her unwavering commitment to passenger safety above all other considerations. Her mother may not understand the significance, but she smiles at the shiny object. "It's beautiful, honey. Your father would be so proud." "I think he would," Elaine agrees, taking her mother's hand. Later that week, Elaine is back in the cockpit of Flight 217 to Denver. As the aircraft pushes back from the gate, she feels the familiar thrill of commanding an aircraft. the responsibility for hundreds of lives, the culmination of decades of training and experience. But now there's something else too, the knowledge that one person's courage can indeed change an entire system. Through the cockpit window, the vast expanse of O'Hare stretches before them, runways gleaming in the morning sun. Elaine exchanges standard communications with the tower, her voice clear and assured. Flight 217, you are cleared for takeoff. Cleared for takeoff, Flight 217, she confirms, advancing the throttles smoothly. The powerful aircraft begins its acceleration down the runway. Beside her, Daniels calls out the speeds as they approach rotation. The moment arrives, and Elaine pulls back on the yoke with practiced precision. The aircraft responds, lifting into the clear blue Illinois sky. As they climb away from the ground, Elaine allows herself a small smile. In aviation, as in life, integrity sometimes requires fighting gravity, pushing against powerful forces that would keep you down. But with enough courage, skill, and determination, you can rise above it all. And that, perhaps, is the most important flight lesson of all. If you've enjoyed this powerful story of courage and integrity, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Your support helps us continue sharing these important true stories that might otherwise go untold. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We look forward to bringing you more inspiring content in the future.